Hey guys, welcome to Cosmic Road. This is Jack getting here. Let's talk about the whole Alaska UFO situation. There have been some updates and some information that's coming out. Some of it's just rumor and speculation, but there is some information. So let's talk about what we've got going. This is Jack. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal on Cosmic Road. Please hit like, please subscribe. Join me on social media. Find the links for Facebook and Twitter below. I'd love to have you there. And just a comment. Let me know how y'all guys are doing and what y'all actually think of this craziness. Let's see. Here is the some of the new information. I've provided links to this in the below. This is from the Alaska Beacon. Several other unidentified objects have also traveled over Alaska recently. So, after a U.S. Air Force fighter shot down an unidentified object over Alaska's North Slope on Friday, Senator Dan Sullivan said several other similar objects have traveled over the state in recent weeks. There are things that were seen on radar but weren't explained, he says. So I don't know what they were, but I think our military is trying to figure that out as well. But this had similar signatures, he said, comparing Friday's object to the prior ones. Sullivan did not cite the source of his information, but he is among the members of the Senate Committee on Armed Services and regularly receives classified briefings. An on-duty public affairs officer at the Pentagon asked about Sullivan's comment, said he was unable to confirm it at this time. I join my fellow delegation members in expecting answers from our military leaders for how unidentified objects have been able to infiltrate our airspace in recent weeks, said U.S. Representative Mary Patola from Alaska. It was not immediately clear whether she was referring to the multiple objects that Sullivan referred to. We need to be aware of any other such objects over Alaska, she says. Sullivan and other legislators have criticized the federal government's failure to shoot down a suspected Chinese surveillance balloon before it crossed the U.S. and was downed by a fighter jet. This week, the Washington Post reported that the balloon shot down off South Carolina was part of a vast aerial surveillance program. On Friday, Sullivan said he wasn't certain whether the object shot down over the North Slope was another balloon or whether it was from China. He said it was moving at about 40 knots, about 46 miles per hour, and had no wings. The object was somewhere between a 55-gallon drum and a small Volkswagen in size. It entered Alaskan airspace near Nome, if I'm saying that right, and moved northeast. Other officials said the object didn't appear to have any ability to maneuver itself. So very balloon-like. And so that's interesting. Now, Tim McMillan, who is a very a cool guy and with some very interesting stuff to say and some great knowledge, he says, update. I woke up to a message saying the WDO 17B warhead on the Sidewinder that hooked down the Alaskan UFO may have detonated when it made impact with the object shot down near Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. So that's interesting. He goes on to say, consider this unconfirmed since I can't follow up on that message at the moment. But if true, it would suggest the object had enough mass to trigger the missile's IR proximity or contact fuse. For comparison, in the shoot down of the Chinese spy balloon, you'll notice the missile passes through the balloon and doesn't appear to explode. So whatever this object in Alaska is, although it was smaller, it was more solid. So that's interesting. It doesn't sound too balloon-like, but who knows? Tim McMillan also says something else intriguing NSC spokesperson John Kirby said the object was floating in a northeasterly direction and was at the mercy of the prevailing winds. However, if that's true, it would mean it was flying against the wind, which at 40,000 feet could have been. And he goes on, he lists a graphic showing the various winds. And he concludes 100 to 150 miles per hour. So, yeah, so he's saying there could be a discrepancy there, and maybe it was actually going against the wind, which would argue against the balloon theory. He says, I still lean towards this having possibly been something like what the CIA did in the 1960s to test the capabilities of the Soviet Union's Tall King radar under Project Palladium. In the program, the U.S. released sub-launched metallic balloon-borne spheres to trigger USSR Tall King's radar in Cuba. So could this be, the Chinese testing our defenses? Very likely. Very likely. I think that's probably the most likely explanation for what this object is. If this were a real UFO or, non-human vehicle of some sort, they wouldn't tell us about that. They don't tell us about that stuff. But that is going on. We are firing at UFOs and they are firing it at us. I've made a whole series of videos talking about each of those phenomena. And that does happen. And, and some of that is coming from very high sources and very well corroborated and confirmed. So that has been going on for decades. And they don't talk about that. And, that's because it's all part of the program, whatever the hell they're doing. They don't want us to know, and they don't talk about it. And so if they are talking about it, unless this is part of some sort of disclosure initiative, which, you can't discount, but I don't think it is. I don't think it is. So I think the most likely explanation is that it is the Chinese testing our defenses. We just fired an ICBM, unarmed ICBM, as a show of force into, I think, the Atlantic. And, things are kind of heating up worldwide. China, Russia, it's not looking great as far as the worldwide outlook. And and we just fired the ICBM yesterday, the same day that we took down this UFO off of Alaska. So are those two things related? Well, it certainly shows that our readiness, is related in terms of our readiness. So anyway, just interesting. Let's see. Anything else in this thread? The aircraft that was shot down, it was said to have exploded into tiny pieces when it hit the water, which has confused some defense and intelligence officials who expected it to remain relatively intact, similar to the Chinese balloon. Well, this is obviously a different thing. It's not whatever that was. That was a very, very obviously a balloon. This is something else. And Tim goes on to speculate on what it is. He says, my hot take speculation based on low information about today's shootdown. It was a small hybrid aerostat monitoring emissions related to the U.S.'s ICBM test last night out of Vandenberg. So that would make sense, right? I mean, it's not a sexy answer. It's not an alien answer, but it is probably closer to the truth. He says something about it being purely a spy balloon doesn't match up. The DoD detected it over U.S. territorial waters yesterday and then shot it down today over U.S. territorial waters. What are we talking from detection to shoot down? 12 hours, 18 hours? By the way, if you're just joining me, this is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like, please subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. You don't want to miss a thing. Please follow me on social media. There's Facebook and Twitter links below. I'd love to see you guys there. That'd be really cool. And comment, let me know what you're thinking about all of this. What do you think this object was, and what does it mean? Oh, and also please consider supporting the channel by becoming a channel member or leaving a super chat. That keeps me motivated and keeps this channel going. So I really appreciate that. Tim goes on to say, something about it being purely a spy balloon doesn't match up. Already did that. The object didn't move 12 nautical miles in 12 to 18 hours at 40,000 feet. Typical wind speeds at 40,000 are what? 10 to 125 miles per hour. Since there was some confusion in my original tweet, a hybrid aerostat operated by a foreign power to spy on the US's ICBM test, not a US asset. Who would be interested in said emissions? Somebody asked. He says China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, basically anyone who might find themselves on the receiving end of an American ICBM. Yeah. By calling it an aerostat, are you suggesting it was tethered? And an aerostat, by the way, is like a blimp. I love blimps. In my novels, in one of my novel series, The Atomic Sea, I write a lot about zeppelins and dirigibles or dirigibles. And I love those things. Those are awesome. Could that be what it was? That would explain, because those have more of a fixed structure. So, and it has, tanks inside of it. So, that might be heavy enough to trigger the warhead of the missile. Because this is different from the Chinese spy balloon that we shot down the other day, because that did not trigger the explosion of the missile because it wasn't heavy enough. But this did. So interesting. And Tim answers, yes, it could be tethered possibly to a submersible. He says, perhaps. So interesting. If this was a submersible launching some sort of blimp or something, some sort of small blimp, I don't, this is a tiny craft, whatever it was. I've never heard of a blimp that small, or a dirigible or whatever airship that small. So this is, interesting. Interesting. Yeah. So, what do you guys think? What is this crazy gizmo? What are we talking about here? Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate the super chat. It's awesome. Awesome. Let's see. They're building a narrative here. Yeah. At first, I assumed it was Russian drone to mess with us over Ukraine, but then as details emerged, it is now a UAP. Yeah, sorry, my acid reflux is just driving me crazy. Yeah, no, it's early days. I don't want to call it a UAP. I don't think that would tell us if it was a UAP. But just for argument's sake, what if this is all part of some sort of planned disclosure initiative? And all of this was set up to get us thinking about the skies and balloons and objects in the skies and shooting them down potentially. And in which case, it maybe this was UAP, maybe it wasn't, but maybe this is part of some sort of disclosure initiative to get us thinking about in those terms. Totally possible. Totally possible. Um, but I mean, we have shot down UAP before, and they have shot down us. That is an ongoing thing, but they never talk about it. So I'm skeptical about whether it could actually be a real UAP. But I would, I could be, yeah, I wanted to say I would love to be corrected, but then I started to think about what that meant. That means I would love for it to have been a UFO that was shot down, and I actually want to de-escalate any tension between us and our otherworldly cohabitants of the galaxy or whatever. The less shooting down, the better. But yeah, it's definitely be sexier if it were an alien. Also, the green lasers. Yeah, the green lasers over Hawaii. What is that about? Is that China doing something? What the what? If you know what we're talking about, you can find screenshots of it, of these green lasers, this like grid pattern, like matrix style grid pattern over Hawaii. Some possibly from a satellite, like a Chinese satellite. I don't know, but we've got crazy balloons. We've got weird Volkswagen sized things being shot down. We've got lasers in Alaska, or excuse me, Hawaii. It's nuts, man. It's nuts. Or Pinto, yeah. Whiplash says they shot this down northeast of Alaska. That's no man's land. What commercial flights are there? It's practically the North Pole or even Russian airspace. Exactly. The wind is crazy at that altitude. I don't, for one, they can't shoot down real UFOs, nor do they try. I would disagree with that. I made a series of videos showing various incidents where they have shot down UFOs, or at least fired at them, and in some cases, seemingly having shot them down, but at least fired on them. So, I mean, it does seem unlikely that we could bring down a UFO. That's nuts. These things are highly advanced craft. How could we possibly shoot them down? And yet, you do hear fairly credible reports of that happening. So, I believe that has happened, but I respect your opinion if you don't. I mean, it does seem so unlikely. The best way that I've heard it explained is that these ships, the real UFOs, there are two fields around them. There's the inner field and the outer field. And when the outer field is engaged, the inner field is also engaged. And the outer field is what they use when they're doing the fantastic maneuvers, because they're, it's like the anti-gravity and warping space and time and stuff. Or I guess the inner field does do anti-gravity as well, but the warping space and time is the outer field. And so when they have that engaged, they're impenetrable. We can't get them through that outer field. But when they have that disengaged, which they do often when they're just flying around the atmosphere, they only have the inner field engaged, and that I've heard we can shoot through by one weapon or another. I have heard various accounts that there are various weapons we use to shoot at them with. In the book The Day After Roswell by Colonel Philip J. Corso, he talks about them developing an energy weapon, and the whole book is framed in that narrative. It begins with, hey, we have a war going with UFOs, and we've developed weapons to shoot against them, and here's how we got there. And the whole book is about reverse engineering alien technology recovered from Roswell, as well as other places. And the book ends with us finally having developed an energy weapon to shoot at UFOs. But he doesn't go into any detail about that or provide any context for that. Who are we shooting at? It's just so frustrating. But that's one way we seem to be shooting at these things. But there are also many other accounts, including pilot accounts, of just firing bullets at them or missiles. Again, it's crazy that could be effective. That seems so unlikely that these fantastic ships could be affected by missiles or bullets. And if that was the case, why would we have needed to have developed this energy weapon? There's so many unanswered questions. Let's see. Gaz Wild says, why would they announce it on mainstream media as soon as it was shot down? Exactly, right? They don't talk about this. It could also be a political thing just to try to make Biden look better. I'm not going to get political. But yeah, you can't discount the politics of this, right? There's political motivations for everything, right? So absolutely that, you can't discount that. And, but there's also the geopolitical situation with China and Russia, and things seem to be heating up there. That's not great. Whiplash says, I was also thinking that no matter complaints from Russia or China or North Korea, etc. Yeah, nobody claimed the U.A.P. That's unusual. I know, right? Yeah, nobody, has said, hey, that was ours. Stop shooting at our stuff. Now, and that's significant, right? So one explanation I've heard for that is that if it was China, for example, and if we didn't say, hey, we shot down a Chinese ship, then they don't have to retaliate. Now, I don't know how many people are aware of the Twitter outage the other day, but there was also an outage on Facebook and other platforms that seems to have been a cyber attack. And some people have said that cyber attack was a Chinese response to us shooting down the Chinese balloon. It was a retaliation. So with the Alaskan UFO, if we don't call it a Chinese ship and say, hey, we've shot down a Chinese ship, then they don't have to retaliate. That's the thinking. That's the theory. I'm not saying that one way or another that's true, but that is a theory. So something to keep in mind. Whiplash says, I think it's a false flag, our own doing. Could be political. Good comment. Yeah, it totally could be a false flag. Yeah, absolutely, totally possible. They better have more to say soon. Yeah, they better. They work for us. Yeah, right. They do work for us. I think they forget that. Oh, Loves Alien says it's super chat. Thank you so much. Russia shot down a UFO almost exactly a month ago. Oh, wow. I hadn't heard about that. Okay. Do you have any details about that? I think they're getting us used to disclosure. Yeah. I mean, it kind of, I get that indication here and there. I really do. So, I mean, that'd be so cool. I hope that's the case. What I see from Arrow and Sean Kirkpatrick with the UAP report, where every single thing on it was a lie. I mean, basically, it was a nothing burger where they didn't even say much. I mean, they said there were no collisions, no health effects, and here's some numbers. Well, that was all they said in the UAP report, and every one of those items was a lie. There are collisions. Preston Dennett did an excellent compilation video showing all the different cases that he's aware of where UFOs have collided with human vehicles, planes, trains, and automobiles. Yeah, I mean, right? Imagine a UFO hitting a train. I mean, talk about unlikely. But in the documentary Missing 411, the UFO Connection, David Paulides gives the example of a UFO that abducted an elk instead of a cow and hit a tree on the way out. So these things, make mistakes and they can be clumsy. But that is the extreme minority of these cases. There's so many of these ships flying around. I mean, their involvement with Earth and likely humanity is heavy, and there's a lot of them, and so only a very small percentage of them do clumsy things like hit trees and crash and stuff. But I think that just shows how many of these things there are. But anyway, yeah. So the UAP report, a big nothing burger, but every single item on it was a lie. There are collisions, of course. There are health effects. There's Preston Dennett will tell you there's a lots of healing effects, and I totally believe that because I've experienced an amazing, extraordinary healing from beyond. But which sounds woo woo. I know if you're just joining me, that's going to sound crazy, but it's a thing. And but there's also cancers, radiation, unexplained pregnancies, obviously from the abductions and the hybridization program. So that was a lie. Point one was a lie. Point two was a lie. And then lastly, the numbers. They said, over half of these cases that we've reviewed can be explained by mundane reasons. Well, that was a lie too. They actually took a bunch of cases they had discarded because they could explain them, and they hadn't even reviewed them because they had already found prosaic explanations for them without having to, make them a major point of review. And they took those cases and they put them back in those, they included them in the numbers just so they could show that over half the cases had been explained. So every point in the UAP report was a lie. So I'm not impressed by Arrow or Sean Kirkpatrick. So, getting back to the idea of, are they doing disclosure? I don't know because of that. But there are indications that, well, let's just say there are factions, right? There are factions and there are factions within factions. There's probably people within Arrow that are pro-disclosure. And also the language forming Arrow, probably heavily influenced by Chris Mellon, who is said to have influenced, if not written, the UAP task force language. I mean, that language is awesome. The actual foundation of Arrow is brilliant. If they actually do what it says in the charter, it's going to be an amazing organization. but they are not getting off on the right foot, as far as I'm concerned. Christian says, I don't like being so conspiratorial. The only reason I'm into this is because of my experience, but not everything is disinformation or false flag. Yeah, no, that's true. That's a good point. People are very quick to point out false flag for everything. There are false flags. There are things, look here when they want you to look there, or what have you. That does happen. The government is not entirely honest. I mean, they're not. And they haven't been for a long time. That's not a political thing. That's just, centralization of power leads to abuse of power. So, that's my take on it, but as far as false flags and conspiracies, there are conspiracies, but you're right. There is a tendency in the UFO community to have a knee-jerk reaction to certain things. Lou Elizondo comes out with these amazing videos, and people instantly say, "Oh, it's disinfo, false flag." Well, I call BS on that. I think that's just a knee-jerk reaction. There's a certain conspiratorial mindset where everything is a false flag, and not everything is a false flag. So I'm right there with you. I totally get what you're saying. I totally get that, and I agree. Winning Black says, I doubt it. Christian says, yes, they can shoot UFOs down, some of them. Yeah, they seem to, right? They seem to. But, okay, so if they can shoot down UFOs, how do they shoot down UFOs? Is it only the energy beams that Colonel Corso talked about? Or can they actually shoot down shoot down UFOs, as various pilots and whistleblowers have testified, with bullets and missiles? If that's true, then why did they need the energy beam? Maybe the energy beam can penetrate that outer layer that I was talking about, but bullets and missiles are effective against the inner layer. Well, that's why we need people to come forward that are involved in this so they can give us answers. It's so frustrating. Winning Black says it was a drone. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's about the size of a drone, right? Small car, Volkswagen sized. There are drones that are bigger, but yeah, it's totally drone sized. It was flying pretty high though. Do drones get that high, 40,000 feet? I don't know enough about drones. So if you guys know, let me know. A new low-tech drone. Christian says, honestly, no one here knows anything about UFOs. Really. Some UFOs we could shoot down, some we can't. It could have been a $2 asset UFO from the mothership that she didn't care about. Hey, totally possible. The senator of Alaska was so angry because of the spy balloon violating her airspace. Lots of these people think the U.A.P topic is preposterous. So that Chinese balloon was hilarious. Yeah. And also some have said that because they were so slow to act on the first balloon, that they acted very quickly, more for political reasons, for this second object, whatever it was. However, according to that piece I read just a little while ago, there actually have been a series of similar objects, not the balloon objects, but similar to this car-sized thing that we shot down today, that have appeared over Alaska in recent weeks. So that's interesting, and that would go with Tim McMillan's theory that it's the China most likely probing our defenses in that area. If they're, why that area? Is it because it's close to Russia, or their bases over on that side of the sea? I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, if you're just joining me, joining us. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. Please hit like, please subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. You don't want to miss a thing. This is Jack. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal and all that kind of good stuff. Please join me on social media. I'm trying to build my social media platform to get some people to interact with on Twitter and Facebook. So there's links to that below. So consider joining me there. And, if you want to support the channel, consider becoming a channel member or leaving a super chat. Either way would be great. Or just subscribe. Either way, it'd be really great. Keeps me going, keeps me motivated. Let's see. I'm concerned. Christian says, I'm concerned if it's a real UFO because does this mean we are going to start shooting all of them down? Well, from my research, I've talked about this a lot, and this gets into the conspiratorial stuff, but I firmly believe that the control group has been working with the beings for a long time, for decades, going back at least to the early 60s, if not earlier, maybe the 50s, if not before that. It could be Operation Paperclip. Paperclip brought them in the 40s. So, who knows? But yeah, I think that the evidence shows pretty clearly that we've been working with the beings since at least the 60s. They, I did the piece, the video with, what was his name? Don Phillips. I'm probably getting that name wrong. The Lockheed Martin Skunk Works engineer who helped develop the SR-71 Blackbird in the early 60s. That's when he was there, and he had friends back then that were fellow engineers with Skunk Works that worked with the beings, and they would tell him about it. And the beings were helping Skunk Works develop these training machines to train humans into piloting our own UFOs. Some call them ARVs, or alien reproduction vehicles. And then it was shortly after that that UFOs began to be seen in the skies that were human piloted. They would set down and people would see humans coming out of them. And whistleblowers began to talk to people like John Keel about it. And, John Keel was talking about this and pinpointed it to the 60s. And so this has been pretty well corroborated by a number of people that there were human operated UFOs in the 60s. And there have been multiple people saying that, Area 51 and Lockheed, all those guys were working with the beings. Even Bob Lazar in what was it, the late 80s or early 90s said that he interacted with a being. This is a recovered memory that he had years later. He was going into a random hotel room one day, and he had this recovered memory of interacting with a being at S4 in the hospital area of S4. So, and I believe that that's why he was made to drink the pine scented drink that he was made to drink, and also made to undergo hypnosis. I believe that he was probably regularly interacting with the beings as they do there, and that taking these drinks and the hypnosis made it easier for them to plant false memories in his mind and to delete memories from his mind. So that's my take on it. Take that with a grain of salt. I'd love to hear your opinions on it. But yeah, I think they're working with the beings. They are shooting at some UFOs, and they are working with the occupants of others. They are involved in some sort of cosmic struggle. And, do we, trust them to have picked the right side? Does the government typically do the right thing for the right reasons? Yeah. I don't know. I'm not real excited. I'm not real excited. Christian says, I think some aliens look human. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely they do. And the hybrids, the latter generation hybrids are said to look exactly human and even to be able to infiltrate and live amongst us. And others are said to be able to appear however they want to appear. And of course, they can affect our minds into, we'll see whatever they want us to see or think whatever they want us to think. That's pretty well corroborated that they have mind control. David Jacobs says, according to his research and the thousands of people that he has hypnotically regressed, alien contactees, and he's regressed some of them many, many times. According to his research, and he's seems to predominantly be looking at the grays, although he has in the gray culture or civilization, including the manted beings that seem to be above them, etc. Well, their technology is interesting. Their mind control technology is interesting because it's stronger when they're in or near the ship, but it is diluted when they're further away from the ship, hinting at a technological component to their mental abilities. However, the hybrids don't seem to have that problem. They don't need the technology to mind control people. They can do it at Walmart. Yeah, in fact, he has an amusing anecdote, well, kind of an alarming but amusing anecdote of a hybrid. Um, excuse me. So according in that book, in the Walking Among Us by David Jacobs, excuse me, there's this one incident where so the parents of the hybrids, the contactees, the abductees who are abducted or contacted, throughout their lives and have probably many, hybrid children. Well, in that book, it is shown that they become that they are asked to care for the kids and to teach them how to interact with human civilization. Not all of them, but the more human looking ones are they live with the contactee family at a certain stage in their evolution, their age, and the contactee family will then teach them what the refrigerator is, what the microwave is, how to go to the store and how to do shopping, and how to blend in society. And there's one incident where I forget if it's the mother or somebody else who takes the teenage hybrid into a store, and the hybrid likes a t-shirt and grabs it and starts to walk out with it, but he mind controls the clerk into thinking that he had already bought it. So it's kind of a cute story, but it also, I mean, the morals of these guys, leave a little desire something there. And let's see. But yeah, so they are. I firmly believe they are walking among us. There are hybrids. They are here. There are plenty of others that can look like humans. According to my research, I totally understand if that's too crazy for y'all guys, but or some of you maybe. But yeah, that's what I think. Christian says, or they got human suits. Yeah. Did you read Operation Trojan Horse? Is that the Jacques Vallée book? Remind me. I don't know. I haven't read that. But it's on my list. I have so many books on my list. I just got the new. I think it's out. I think I pre-ordered it. I think it's been delivered to my Kindle. I'm not sure. The Christopher Bledsoe book. I'm really excited about that. And there's another one that I just downloaded that is available that looked really good. I can't even remember what it was. There's so many books I need to read. I tend to be reading the more current books right now, the ones that are just coming out, but I really should read some of the classics. I like the day after Roswell by Colonel Corso. And that is foundational as far as I'm concerned in all UFO lore. That's like, required reading. And Jacques Vallée is as well. So is John Keel. And I really need to get on that and read all those books. Yeah, totally. Totally. Alexander says they have to be more honest about UAPs. Preach, brother. Preach. Chris says, why attack now before we are prepared? Yeah. Do you mean attacking the UAPs, or do you mean China or Russia? Jake, not from State Farm, says, hi, everyone. Hey, Jake. Chris says, thank you for your show, sir. Chris says that. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Nick says, hello from Denmark. Hey, how's it going, Nick? I've got a good friend from Denmark. Alexander says, Portugal here. Hey, awesome. We got a global community here. That's awesome. A Chinese ARV. Yeah, that is something that really intrigues me. Because if we have ARVs, if we have our own human operated UFOs, they've got to have them too, right? China's got their own ARVs, Russia's got their own ARVs. Other countries probably have these things as well. So some of what we're seeing in the skies is probably that, right? It's got to be. Got to be. And so some of these ships that we're shooting at may be theirs. And some of the ships that are firing on us may be theirs. Does that explain some of what we're seeing? Like the ships setting fires in Italy, the UFOs setting fires in Italy, and then shooting down that helicopter? Does it make sense that that could be a foreign hostile ARV? Um, could be. Why would they be setting fires in Italy though? Alien or human? I just want to know the answer to that. What was going on there? But yeah, no, absolutely. To your point, yes, I believe that's very likely. Yeah, they've got stuff. We've got stuff. They've got stuff. Of course, like all right, counterpoint. If we have our own, if we're working with the beings and they helped us develop these vehicles and our ability to use them, does that mean that these other countries were working with the same beings? Did they develop this technology by stealing it from us? We know there's, spies and people that do that. China is pretty infamous for doing that. So could it be something like that? Or are they working with different beings? Are we human countries pawns in some sort of cosmic chess game? And, the Russia's working with the reptiles and we're working with the grays and China's working with the, whatever, the amoeba people. I mean, possible, possible. Not a happy thought though. Not a happy thought. I really hope that we have picked the right side in all this. What are the odds that we pick the right side? Let's see. Nick says, I hope they will show a video of the craft. Then they get a hold of it. Yeah. I would love to see a video of it. Jake says, I'm sure they are here. We are here most likely because of them. Oh, Julian's here from Wales. Hey, how's it going? My ethnicity, I did the ethnicity from the DNA sites, whatever, and I'm largely British, so that's cool. Christian says, dude, I'll pay you if you read Trojan Horse. Is that Jacques Vallée, or is that John Keel? Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up. But you don't have to pay me. I will buy that and read it. Just a matter of finding time for it. It's on my radar. I think I downloaded the sample just to put it on my Kindle so that I would have it there to see, to remind myself to buy it and read it. Let's see. I'm not going to get your name right. Viridiana Franco. That smell like Roswell. Lies. Yeah. They do that. Yeah, the amoeba race. Chris says we should not attack U.A.P without a definite way to win. We've had these here for a long, long time. Unless there is no other option and have no choice, pick a fight with a polar bear with a pellet gun. Absolutely, man. Preach, brother. We should not be shooting at these things. I mean, what the hell are they thinking? I mean, I assume that the beings we're working with have, made some deal with us to work against the other beings or some of the other beings. But what are the odds that we pick the right one? I mean, the story with Eisenhower and that whole thing, President Eisenhower, one of the very stories is, because there's different versions of that story about him meeting with the beings. One version is he met with one race. One version is he met with 3 different races and made deals with 2 and denied 1. One version of that story is that he denied the Greys because they wanted to abduct people, but I don't, there's a lot of abductions going on. Maybe they're unauthorized. The other version is that he made a deal with the Greys, but he denied the Pleiadians or the Nordics or the human-looking ones. And because they wanted us to disarm, or they wanted us to stop our nuclear weapons and our nuclear power, and to stop using nuclear technology in general. And in return, they were going to help us achieve, enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment and betterment, and make our world better. and help us toward the fifth dimension or whatever. I mean, I don't think those terms were used, but that was the idea, right? And he said no. That's one version of the story. I have no idea which version of the story that is, but we continued using our nukes and we're not enlightened. So, to me, that sounds just as credible as anything else. On the other hand, you would think that he'd be more likely to make a deal with the human looking ones. So, I don't know. I don't know. This is great. I would love to know the truth on President Eisenhower in his meeting. Um, let's see. I'm waiting on a text. I have to go pretty soon. I got some stuff to do. But I just wanted to pop on here and chat with you guys and to share with you about the how there have been a series of objects like the one shot down yesterday over Alaska in the last few weeks. And also Tim McMillan's thoughts that this could be an aerostat, a hybrid aerostat, some sort of a blimp like device, meaning to test our defenses. So, and also the idea that we're not naming the nationality that it's from so that they don't have to retaliate. So, anyway, I wanted to pop off and share that with you. I probably do need to go in the near future, but I've got a few more minutes. Yeah, but absolutely, we shouldn't be shooting at them. That seems like a bad idea. That seems like it's such a bad idea. Christian says, wouldn't be surprised if he didn't sleep well last night. I'm talking about our president. Those hitchhikers are real, man. Hitchhikers are real. Hitchhikers are totally real. I had an experience with that. I've talked about that before. I used to do ghost hunting. In fact, I just recently quit ghost hunting because a negative entity interaction in what you might call a hitchhiker that I had to have removed by somebody that can do that. I mean, thank God there are human beings that are sensitive and that have abilities that can interact with these energies and these entities, and they are. And and thank God I know one because that thing was unpleasant. Nick Christian says, "Make peace, not war." Absolutely, man. Juan says, do we know the shape of the object shot down? Well, it's said to be a cylindrical and a silver, and the size of a small car, about the size of a Volkswagen. And it's heavy enough to have activated the warhead on the missile, unlike the balloon that we shot down. So, a drone, would fit that description, right? Not the normal drone that we think of, some weird drone. A blimp might possibly fit that description because it's a fixed structure with tanks on the inside of it. So either one of those could fit that description. Uh, 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 but yeah, let's see. That's not like a Honda Civic size. How could something that small float at 40,000 feet? Yeah, you're right. That's a good question. I mean, the Chinese, the balloon was a high altitude balloon, but that was a specialty thing. And this wasn't that. This was a totally different shape than that. So, yeah. And can drones fly that high? I don't know. Can your average or in general, can drones fly at 40,000 feet? I don't know. So, um, yeah, any news? Yeah, just what I've shared that there have been a series of objects like the one shot down in Alaska flying over Alaska for the last few weeks. And that Tim McMillan is sharing that it may be a blimp or an aerostat, as he calls it. And anyway, so yeah, stuff like that. There are a few tidbits floating out there, but it is still early days. It's still the fog of war. Really, you should wait 72 hours before making any sort of definitive comment. So I'm not going to say what I think it is. Well, probably too late. I probably already said what I think it is. But yeah, where would be the fun in waiting 72 hours, right? Come on, you got to speculate. That's the fun, right? Because right now it could be anything. Right now, it could be an alien. It could be, my grandmother. I shouldn't say my grandmother. That sounds disrespectful. Love you, Grandma. Let's see. Peter says it stayed 24 hours in the sky, but no balloon, right? Yeah, it stayed up there for a long time, apparently, which would seem to rule out a drone. A normal drone as we think of it. Balloon obviously could stay up there for a long time, but it was very small and very high. So it's a weird one. It's a weird one. Through glass darkly, it says airships can do that. Yeah. Can they go up to 40,000 feet through glass darkly? Is that what you're saying, that they can do that, or that they can stay up that long? Because they can definitely stay up that long. And I know specialty ships like the Chinese high altitude balloon could do that. But that was my understanding is that was a special high altitude balloon, and that the thing shot down in Alaska was much smaller, had a very different shape than that. So you would think it would have different aeronautic capabilities than the one shot down in Alaska. But I mean, it could have even greater capabilities. So who knows? But yeah, Through Glass Darkly says need to confirm, but probably. Through Glass Darkly, for those of you who don't know, has a great channel. He does fantastic interviews, and you should check him out. And he is a military guy, and he has some expertise in these matters. Kyle Hoagie says, was it an official statement that noted the object exploded into tiny pieces? I'm not sure if that was an official statement or not. I can't remember exactly where that came from. Yeah. I want a name to call you. Yeah, there's no call sign for you, Purple Dinosaur. You have great comments, and thank you so much for your super chats. I wish I had a name to refer to you by. Is there a name that I can call you with the the emoji as the Purple Dinosaur? Um, let's see. She says, or he says, exactly. Drones can't hover longer than a few hours. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be any sort of drone that I'm aware of. I mean, there could be some sort of fancy, super fancy military drone that can do that, but it doesn't seem to be like a drone, any sort of drone that I know of that could do that. So it seems definitely, I think that Tim McMillan's idea that it could be a blimp or an aerostat testing our defenses is probably on the money. I think that's probably what we're dealing with. But it's fascinating to see the worldwide coverage of this. I love it. I love it. And it shows that, it shows a lot of things about the whole UAP topic, right? And, anyway, and how the press responds to this and how the government responds to this, they're all over this, right? But they don't talk about what I think of as the real UAP activity. So, I think this is not an alien, although I could be proven wrong, but I tend to think this is more of a blimp or something. Okay. Through Glass Darkly says airships fly routinely at 40,000 feet. Source Air Force officer. Okay. I totally buy that. I totally buy that. Christian says, is that Shannon in the house? Oak Shannon? Who's Shannon? Let's see. Oh yeah, the Troy. Okay. Thank you. All right, Troy. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm committing that to memory. It's going in the vaults. Troy. Okay. Cool. I like that. I like your emoji. Is that the right name? I'm such a tech illiterate. Is the picture by the name is called an emoji? Yeah, okay. Through Glass Darkly says it is Class A airspace. Christian says, hey, Jack, do you think the ghost, demon, angel, spirits, jinn, whatever it is, related to the UFO phenomenon? Oh, absolutely, 100%. I mean, okay, I say 100%. The way I envision it is that the UFO phenomenon is one subset of an overall phenomenon. And I'm talking about the nuts and bolts UFO phenomenon with real physical craft and real occupants, are a subset of a much larger phenomenon that I call the greater phenomenon. And that encompasses the metaphysical stuff, the cryptid stuff, jinn, ghosts, demons, angels, near-death experiences, all the trippy stuff, and all the Twilight Zone stuff that people experience. And as a ghost hunter, I've had some experience with that, and that stuff is real, and I think it's all part of one big picture. And even the nuts and bolts UFO stuff, some of that is very wibbly wobbly, dimensiony kind of stuff. It seems to some of it seems to materialize into our reality from somewhere else. Willie Stryber says that the beings that interact with him are fishers in the stream of time, meaning that they come from outside of our time stream, our reality. They come from somewhere else, beyond the veil, whatever, and a higher dimension, higher plane of existence. And they come into our reality like fishers, and they pluck out the fish, him and other contactees, and they do whatever they do. And then they put them back in, and then they step out, and then they leave. And so they can interact with our physical dimension for a time, but only for a time. Those particular beings, they don't seem to be able to live here permanently, but others can and do. And some have been here for longer than we have, I think. Some may have created us or helped in our maturation as a species. Some may be from a different alternate time stream, alternate reality, or from the future or the past. There's so many, because they will tell people stuff, right? That's one of the things that I study most, is what the beings tell people. I'm fascinated by contactee experiences and what the beings tell people, because that's when you get a glimpse beyond the veil, right? And but the problem is they don't always tell people the same thing. It's very frustrating. So a lot of discrepancies in what they tell people. You can't necessarily believe the beings. I would love to be able to believe the beings. That would make life so much easier. If you could believe the government, if you could believe the beings, it would make things so much easier. Let's see. Kyle Hoagie says, hoping this is at least a movement towards more public recognition of objects in our skies. Absolutely. And, some people have said that's what it's all about, right? That this is some sort of created narrative designed to get us to look up and to think about what's going on up there. Peter says, but a trained USAF pilot can differentiate between balloon, airship, drone, and unknown. Good point. Winning Black says high altitude spy drones can do that. Can they stay up there that long? I'm really not that conversant with drone technology, I'll be honest. Kyle Hoagie says, have you heard of third man syndrome? Imagine it could be related to the greater phenomenon. What is third man syndrome? I don't know that. Ferry Van Middlecoop says, if the hitchhiker effect is true, according to your own experiences, but the discovery of extraterrestrial or interdimensional is also true, debunks the religion, then what is the real truth? That's a great question, right? My own personal belief is that all the major religions got a part of it. They got a slice of it. So I don't think that the real truth conflicts absolutely with religion. I think they're all getting part of it. That's my own personal belief. So I think that spirituality, because I was an atheist all my life until the last few years when I began to have these experiences. And once you've had these experiences, it's hard to be an atheist. But I do believe it all fits into one bigger picture. 1/3 of all alien abductees are near-death experiencers, people who have died, crossed the veil, and come back. Many of them changed, some with abilities and sensitivities and connection to source that they didn't have before. 1/3 of all alien abductees are composed of that demographic. So that's a spiritual crossover with the alien, right? And there's so many other crossovers. It's really interesting. I'm fascinated by that. I'm super fascinated by that. And it shows that even that subset that is the UFO phenomenon that is a subset of the overall greater phenomenon, even that subset blends in with the overall phenomenon. The metaphysical, weird, woo-woo stuff. Um, in my opinion, I'm not telling anybody what to think. Kyle says, look into third man syndrome sometime. It's people who are in life-threatening scenarios who experience shared hallucinations or people or visions guiding them to safety. Very interesting stuff. Okay. Cool. I will check that out. People who are in life-threatening situations who experience shared hallucinations of people or visions guiding them to safety. Now, is that the same thing as what I call a fear-death experience? What I've heard called a fear-death experience, which is similar to a near-death experience, but the imminent death or fear of death or trauma can compel people to have an out-of-body experience. You think you're in a car wreck, you think you're about to die, and you just leave your body before the car wreck. And you can have basically a near-death experience without actually dying. You may have been perfectly fine in that car wreck, but you've already left your body and you had this near-death experience. Is that the third man syndrome? Is that something similar? Okay, Through Glass Darkly says U.S. Predator drones can loiter up to 14 hours. Okay, that's a good note. Reaper drones can loiter for 27 hours. Wow, that's a long time. And that's what is that? Rocket fuel? What are they powered by? Is that what can keep it up there for that long? Christian says, Ferry, I don't think we're meant to know the real truth. Yeah, they don't want us to know. If they wanted us to know, they would tell us, right? Of course, the beings do tell people stuff, but it's not always the same. Very well may be the exact same thing. Yes, people in car wrecks have heard internal voices and instructions on how to escape to safety. Oh yeah, that's totally true. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I've studied near-death experiences and all that stuff extensively, just as much as I've studied UFOs, because I was an atheist all my life until discovering this stuff, and then it took a massive amount of research for me to wrap my head around what I was experiencing and to kind of make sense of it. So I did a huge deep dive into all that, still ongoing. So yeah, I know what you're talking about, and all that is real, and it's amazing. New report just now said object was in airspace before we detected it. Okay. I've got to check that out. Winning Black says the drone was stationary, which makes it possible to stay that high in the sky. It was at its service ceiling. What report? Reaper drone also has a ceiling of 50,000 feet. Okay. Christian says, Jack, do you think abductions are slowing down? I haven't heard about insects or grays in a while. Now it's more an experience or downloads. That's something that I've been hearing. People do say that. And then others will say that no, it's not. So I've heard both sides of that. I haven't seen anything definitive one way or the other. So I don't know. I think that they are involved in a program. According to books like Walking Among Us, the hybridization program is evolving. So this is a thing with a plan, and it is in progress in different stages of the plan. And they are here now living amongst us. Were they always? I don't know. You'd think they always would have been here if these things have been here for thousands of years. So I just don't know. There's conflicting information on that, but it's a great question, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. But I do have to go, guys. It's Saturday, and I got stuff to do. I'm gonna get in trouble with my wife, so I'm gonna let you guys go. But thank you very much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Please give this video a big thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Please consider hitting the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the bell to be notified of future videos. You don't want to miss a thing. Also, please join me on social media. There's Facebook and Twitter links below. I would love to interact with you there. And until next time, guys, this is Jack with Cosmic Road signing out.